Starting a business, you find out that whatever you thought is going to work doesn't really work. You have to run through a bunch of issues. And that is basically the first barrier for most people. The square root of your employees will do 50% of your work. When you get to, say, 100 people, 10 people will do 50%. If you do 1,000, it's 33. That's why some people are extremely productive. That particular day, I would tell you that it was by far more exciting than the day when I cashed out and sold the company for 500 million. There is no comparison, because that was the day when I saw that light at the end of the tunnel, when there was a proof that it's all up to me now. It's there, right there, go, run.
Yosef, I am so honored and humbled that we're doing this again, because I can't get enough of your stories, of your lessons, of your experience. And just to give some background, you turned a $500 million empire with no funding, without really a background in the beauty business, and no backup plan. And I think that's incredible. I want to go deeper today into behind all that scale. What was the obsession like? What was the pressure like? What was the cost behind that? So let's start there. What don't people understand about getting to $500 million?
So if you haven't been at 500, you wouldn't understand until you get there. But first of all, it's great being here again. So BoxyCharm was a hell of a ride. It was 7 years, which at the end we grossed roughly 500 million in sales. And you're right, there were no fundings. I am still trying to take it all in years later to ask myself how I built this. And the reason I like doing podcasts like this, it's because I need to get those questions that I never thought of asking myself. But in a big scheme of things, I feel like when you look at people who build something big, the commonality is that you just have been going through different monsters that you had to kill and pass on and move on and move on. And it starts always with starting a business. You find out that whatever you thought is going to work doesn't really work. You have to run through a bunch of issues. All the little annoying things starts in the beginning. And that is basically the first barrier for most people. But those who get through this, they run a company to do between a couple hundred thousands to perhaps 1 or 2 or up to 5 million. Then there is the next layer of challenges. And once you go through those layers, again, it's still basic, but not so basic. So to get through that, it is another filter of a whole group of people that get comfortable at what they are. They don't want to go through those. So they would start another business at the same time, and they would just stay at the same place. But those who stick through the storm and they get through this, now they have another clear runway until the next big challenge in their business. It might be 10 million, 20 or 50 million, whatever it is. And then comes the next wall you have to cross. And once you cross that wall, again, a bunch of people that got their business to that size, eventually some churn, some get through this, very few. And then eventually, again, you pass that and comes the next challenge and the next challenge. And each time it's a barrier. That's why you see that, 1 out of 10 companies would gross $1 million, and then another 1 out of 10 would gross over $10 million. And then you keep going on and on. And I remember we pulled this statistic that says that 1 out of 35,000 would gross 100 million or more. And I could not find a statistic to pass that after. Like 1 out of 35,000 companies would make that. And you ask, okay, why is it? It's because the first obvious things that you have to get through, that everybody that passed them eventually had that durability for first challenge, but the next challenge, you just have to be a little bit better. And the better analogy for that would be, for my case, would say basketball. I would go in and I would use the basketball analogy often. You'd say, well, we can play basketball. We might be great in a neighborhood team, but we perhaps not going to be as good as maybe to get to college, right? We're older, but whatever it is, right? And you can look at us and you can say, okay, you guys are not going to be in college basketball. And then those who made it to college basketball, perhaps they can make it to the NBA, but that would be a small percentage. Those who made it to the NBA eventually had to cross every time a bigger challenge. They have to be more disciplined, have some genetics predisposition, so on. So it's the same with business, and you keep going through those. So at first, everyone can get through the first stage. 10% of the people that would start business maybe would get to that stage, right? Which is a lot, and 10%. But then eventually it keeps shrinking and shrinking. And I guess that the thing to wrap it all is that once you understand that, you said, look, all I have to do is just pass this storm. And then I know I'm gonna drop a bunch of people behind me, and that would be easier. I would just get through this, and I would move. After I get through that, I don't know where is the next wall, but it's gonna be much further. And then eventually there's gonna be another wall. Eventually you understand that. And that's what makes once that clicks in your brain, materialize, where it's a good thing. It's a filter for everybody else. I'm glad it happens. My business is going to be better. Everything is going to be better. Now you get excited through the next challenge instead of drain for the new challenge. Said, okay, let me get rid of that business. Let me start another business instead. No, you get more focused. You get more obsessed with fixing that. And you get excited because you said, that's what I was waiting for. I knew it's coming. Here it is. Now, once I get through this, I have a big, long runway from this, and I can add another zero. I might be 10x next time.
I love the analogy with the basketball, and it really clarifies that everybody's a neighborhood entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And then to get to NBA level entrepreneur, you need to be ready to scale, to compete, to get through. But you mentioned one word at the beginning, which was kill your monsters. What were those monsters for you?
Oh, many. Look, I can tell you when we started BoxyCharm, I had already a business. I had a business that, in my family, it sounded like a success story. You know, you're doing good. I had a liquidation company, wholesale liquidation, and I was doing fairly well. And I remember when I started BoxyCharm, it was a fun concept, direct to consumer, completely different. One was business to consumer and business to business, and this one was business to consumer. And I would say the first few weeks when we launched the company, I mean, we had 6 months preparation work to put everything together. Now we launched. Now we sent some boxes, 200 boxes or so. And first week was great. Reaction was good until one girl came in and ripped us apart on social media.
At the beginning? That was in 6 months?
Well, it's 6 months before you launch the company, because you have to figure out how to package products, what products to put in. You have to understand. You build a website, you like the design, you change the design until everything comes together. So let's just say it takes about 6 months. And it was kind of like a star project. I had my company, I had liquidation. I dedicated a desk in that office and a small space in the warehouse for this. That's it. And a small amount of my time, I would say 10%. Now we launched. First few comments were good until one girl ripped us apart, and she was right about everything. Because what you think is going to be the right product market fit is not what the market think that they like. And after she ripped us apart, I said, okay, I have to change everything. Everything I thought I have to do is not what I'm going to do, which was basically what products I'm acquiring. At first, I thought all my excess in inventory liquidation from CVS, those are going to be my products. But really quickly you said, oh, no, it wouldn't be that easy. I have to connect with brands. I have to learn what is the cost of products. I need to create an economic model for this. So I had to really build a business after the first month. And that's why I knew, okay, I need another 6 months for this. So we shut down any kind of marketing and promotion. And for 6 months, I had to figure out everything all over again. We kept sending boxes, but it wasn't with promotion or anything like that until January 2024, where I understood what I need to do, basically. And that's when we start taking off. So we took off, and about a year and a half later, so that would be, I would say, one monster. I mean, I can go down into other monsters. How do you ship? How do you ship a bunch of boxes when you don't understand how to do it? And you have to dive in and understand that there is some shipment programs for every major shipper. And so all those little things are little tiny things you have to figure out, and so on. But the real monster was that first one, right? Then there was the second one, where you have like 30 employees now, you're grossing about 10 million a year, and you feel like a chicken with their head cut off, and you don't understand how to really tier the organization. It was very flat. It was me, another guy, and a bunch of ladies that are very talented, but they're young, they're early 20s. They don't have perspective of a big business yet. And how do you take that and make it an enterprise level business? I have no clue. That was my second monster. And that took us, I would say, a little over a year to figure out how to scale. I would say a year and a half. And there's plenty of monsters. How do you get big brands to talk to you? I remember that the concept that we came up with Boxy was, I'm not going to do sample size. Everyone were doing sample size. All our competitors, the first movers, it was Birchbox, Ipsy, they all do sample size. And the concept was, you go to a brand and they would say, give me some free stuff because you're making samples and you're handing it over for free. So we're going to give it to other consumers you don't have access to, and that's how you're going to do it. In my case, I did full size, but I said, I'm going to pay you the manufacturing cost. It would cost you absolutely nothing. The consumer will get full experience out of the product, and they would be more likely to fall in love with this. That was my pitch. For the consumer, it was great. You pay $21 at the time, and you get over $100 in value, and I can select the best products out there. You don't get sachet sample. You get a full experience from the product, over $100 value, and we would pick the hero items every month. It wouldn't be like with the competition, because it was free products, whatever they could find. With me, I can control. I can actually make the box make sense. So it was a win-win because the brand pays nothing, the consumer gets a great deal, everybody's happy. And you think it's going to work. Anyone I'm going to talk to. Now, small brands, if you own a small brand, I talk to you, I explain to you, I said, well, it cost me nothing. I will do the same thing they're doing, but it would cost you nothing. Okay, fine, here's some product. But how do you get to the big brands? The ones that make you legitimize, the ones like MAC or Tarte Cosmetics or Too Faced, the ones that everybody know. To get to the person that is in charge, it doesn't exist because they don't have a program like this, and nobody needs another job. And we're at a time where beauty was the number one trading category. All of them were selling out. They couldn't make enough product. Why the hell do I need another project? And there was no department for someone doing boxes at the time. So it was someone that does, say, events, and now they have to do another task. They don't want to do it. They're not the owners. They don't care. They get paid the same if they do poorly or they do good, so it doesn't matter. So that was a big challenge for us. And we found that it took us about 3 years to get the big brands. 3 years of spitting blood and trying. I mean, I can't tell you how many attempts we had, and eventually, little by little, after you keep going with a big 5-kilo hammer into the wall and you hit and nothing happened and it bounced back and your hands are tired, eventually you see a crack. Eventually it breaks. And once break, the whole wall collapsed really quickly and they all storming into it. And 4 years into it, pretty much every brand was just, here it is, we have already someone, let's just work with you, we'll do whatever you want. It took years.
I love that story so much because people will see 500 million, will see that number, will say, wow, what a success, but they don't know how much that hammer weighed, how much you had to pound, how much you had to convince, how much you had to do. But something that really strikes me from you is, where did all this motivation come from? You know, some people or most people are happy with a job. Some entrepreneurs are happy with $1 million, $2 million, $10 million. Why did you go so big?
You know, why do people play video games, right? If you play a video game, nobody sees you. You play Nintendo, there's no risk. Nobody knows who you are, but you keep playing that game because you challenge yourself and you want to win, right? So that has a component of a video game, and the money is just a way to keep score. And I think it's true for everything. The second part is there's a lot of camaraderie between what it is. And what actually gives you motivation on the process, even though you're going to say, well, I haven't seen much process in the last few months, but those tiny changes gives you motivation. So even though I haven't landed the big brands early on, there were other wins, other small wins that you understand that eventually it's going to come down to it, and eventually it's going to work, and eventually, and there's other things that motivate you, because ultimately motivation is, I mean, it is so critical. It is important, but what do you do when there is no motivation? You stick to discipline. And you keep going the course, and then that little shiny light at that corner gives you some spark of new motivation and the camaraderie and so on. So it's a lot of things, but overall, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it would be very gloomy and it's going to be raining every day and you wouldn't want to live. It's kind of like Seattle style, right? With no nice scenery, it's just gloomy, no nice scenery. So you're going to want to move to Miami. But I always find that beauty, that blue sky, and let's continue. It's coming, guys. And eventually your job is also to motivate everyone else. And it's a good thing when you motivate everyone else, they indirectly motivate you back.
I really appreciate that view on money as a scorecard, it's gamified. It doesn't mean anything, but it means a lot. And some people perhaps get too concentrated or too wrapped into money as effort or as, and it is. But when you gamify it that way, you think, okay, I'm loving the process, I'm loving the motivation, and when I'm not motivated, I'm still showing up with discipline. But the money is just a scorecard, and I think it really shows how your MBA analogy before, and now that you said gaming, is a way to think about how you get that big. It's not really, it's a very, very great perspective. If we sat with 2004 Yosef, what would he not believe of who you are today?
Oh, me in 2000. Ha. To be honest with you, it's hard to embrace that. That's a good question, but obviously, even me 2014 wasn't me today. But well, in 2000, I was 21. I would be very surprised to find out what my life is today. Very. My mother was a living au pair in the United States at the time, taking care of old people. I didn't even live here at that time. And it was just a massive change. If you say, all right, look, I guess the way to say it is like, okay, if you say, well, I'm going to take everyone you knew at that age, like say 10 friends and acquaintances that you have at that age, around the same age group like you, one of you guys would hit that jackpot. Who do you think is going to be? And that's going to be the life story. Don't put the country, because I would associate, well, my mom does live over there, so it makes sense it's me. But someone's going to go and sell a company for 500 million. Who do you think it's going to be? I would never bet on myself. Never. At that time. I was not the entrepreneur at that time thinking about building businesses. I was thinking of getting a job somewhere, whatever it is. I was working in agriculture, like Mexican. I was not that guy, not that mindset. It only came to me here, where it came by mistake, and I just doubled down on it. It was just one thing that changed my life. One event that you go out, you meet someone, they tell you can make money without having any money. I'm like, great, I don't have any money. But how? Look, this is what you do. You can sell liquidation. Okay, so here's the suppliers. Like, okay, but how do I get people to find out about me? Like, oh, well, SEO, what's that? It's on Google. Well, I don't have money to pay Google. No, it's free. Search engine optimization. You see, those are the paid results. Everything underneath it is free. So we have a person in our office, and he's just getting us for free. I said, you kidding me? So that's just an algorithm, actually. That makes sense. I can figure it out. I'm a fucking machine. What else am I going to do in life? And that's where it was probably that particular day was, not probably, I would tell you that it was by far more exciting than the day when I cashed out and sold the company for 500 million. There is no comparison. No comparison. Because that was the day when I saw that light at the end of the tunnel, when there was a proof that I can, it's all up to me now, and let's do it. It's there, right there, go, run. You can get out of poverty, no more rice and ketchup. You can start eating steaks, but you just gotta get over there. And this is the map. There was nothing more exciting than that.
Amazing. And chills.
You understand that, right?
I understand
you know
that.
what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's extremely motivational for people who think, I'm from another country, I don't have money, that's why I'm not going to be successful. But you are living proof that when you got that hook, you hooked something that was incredibly powerful, you ran full force. And for you, it was SEO, and look where you are today. So I'm really thankful that you told that story, because I think a lot of people need to hear this. Most people think success comes from success, but really...
Actually, I would say that most of what we hear in podcasts, people say, I came with nothing, here I am, came with nothing, here I am. And we know that statistically, most of the wealth comes from new people, self-made. I'm actually very impressed from people who came from money and built something and took it to the next level, or took the family business to new heights. Because in many cases, you barely hear about them. In many cases, you hear about the ones that came from nothing. And it's kind of like where everyone said, well, the ones with money made money. And I say, oh, here, look at the Kardashians, for instance, okay? The parents made the money. But then when you look at the children, you can see some children that took it to a whole different level, and some, they did okay, and some you don't hear about them anymore. Money is not the reason why other people make money. Money, in fact, is less of a reason why people make money because you already have it. You don't have a motivation for that. It might be even challenging. Now it's up to the parents to give you the drive to still do it when you already have the cash. It would be more, why don't we go and try to do another podcast with people who have made it after their parents have made it, and then ask them and the parents, why did you instill in your children to make them this way? Because now we're going to have those children. What are we supposed to do, and how do we raise them to be this way? What is the mindset, and what happens if you have 4? One is complete failure, another one is a great success. How do we mitigate that and make sure that even the failure would be able to at least sustain itself so we can teach them how to hunt? That would be good. And I guess a lot of me's are thinking about the same situation. I have children. How can I make my children hungry? When you get all the food you want, obviously, you say, well, suppress the food from them. Don't give them the food. Yeah, but it's not just that. I didn't have food, but I had food. Food was not, what do you do? And ultimately, I've seen people who came from money that did better than their parents in the same category or different categories. And I'm still trying to put a picture behind this to make sure I can be a better parent and make sure that my kids would have that drive that those people had.
That's an incredible question, and I actually ask it a lot because I find that it's one of those universal statistics that 70% of money gets lost after the third generation. And the first one makes it, the second one maybe makes it more, and then the third one always loses it, or 70% of it loses it. What are your rules for money? What are your thoughts about how to make them hungry? Because you said it's not only about making them hungry. You don't want to be the mean parent that said, you're not eating just because I said so. What are your rules with money today?
I'm still building this rule, right? I'm trying to build my 10 commandments around that. That's so I don't want to go and be an inspiration for anyone about this, but I'll tell you. Okay, so let's analyze the why. Why is it happening? All right. So the obvious is, let's just say you have 2 children, you pass on 100 million. Just put a round number. Each one get 50. Then when you let's just say you did this poorly in terms of trust structure, the government takes 40% of that. Okay, so now, out of that, each one has about 15 million left. And then they have 2 children. They have to split it again. So it goes on and on and on. And that's only 2 children. What if you have 3, 4, 5? So that's one thing. So the government takes 40%. And then it splits, and third generation, you don't have that much. That is one. So how do you mitigate that? The second thing is, and there are answers for this. There's quite a few, but I feel like the important part, and that's something I did hear from a friend of mine, where he told me, look, my dad was a contractor, developer, had lots of buildings, and he would rent them, and now he has it. And he said, when I was a kid, I would sit at a table, they're Jews, so Shabbat dinner, and the men would talk about the buildings they buy and they sell, and it seems obvious that that's what you're going to do when you grow up, right? So that was one. Talk about it. Talk about the business next to them. Talk about money next to them. Don't make it foreign. Make sure they don't idolize it, because there's a piece of it where when we are our own cable that tie ourselves into a tree, think, it's too hard. So let them be around this and let them play with this. Now, if you build a company that you're not going to pass on to your kids. BoxyCharm was not something I can pass on to my kids. I have to give a box with makeup every month, surprise 1 million females. Very hard. Every month. I don't want to pass it on to my kids. I'm passing on a headache. I'm telling you, it's great while you're in it, but when you get out, thank you, Jesus. But if it's a real estate portfolio or something like this, you can go and start. So I told my daughter she needs to start doing internship. She's 15 years old. And I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to manage everything for me on all my investments. And I'm going to pay you, obviously, internship, but I'm also going to pay you with stock options. So it's sweat equity. This way, I still own it because it's stock options, but eventually she's going to start taking a piece of the business, so it's going to be great for tax benefits. Eventually, she's going to have a big piece of it, so she didn't actually inherit that. So she's avoiding the 40% tax, but she would learn how to manage portfolio, and eventually she's going to learn what to buy, what not to buy, and she'll learn that part. Anyone can do that. That is something you can pass on to your kids. And I told her, as you do it, when your brother we're gonna feel he's good enough for that, he's 10 years old, you're gonna start hiring him underneath you, and it's gonna be the same structure. So this is something I'm doing right now. I also convinced my son, Tom, look, you can either get the toy you want, or I'll give you 3 times more than that, but we open a Robinhood account for you. He's 10. Now he wants to buy kids stuff. I said, I talked to them about how people buy stuff they don't need, and that's all that, and I can talk about. So what I said is, we're gonna go and open a Robinhood account for you for your birthday, and instead of giving you, say, $50, I'll give you $300. We're gonna put it over there, and we're gonna start growing that money, but the rule is you can't touch it until you're 18. And he said, let's do it. So now you spare them stuff they don't really need, and you put them into, and I found out from last time when I did this with $100, now I'm gonna do it with $300. He always asks about it. He cares about this. So I'm gonna put it on Robinhood just so you can have you can gamify it. It's something, it's visual, and it's gonna be every day, it's up and down and so on. So make him not foreign for investing, knowing how to manage money, not to be afraid of that, and then hopefully it's gonna work. I don't know if it's gonna be working. We have to catch up in a decade or so, and I'll tell you, I don't know, it didn't work with this one, but or maybe it would. But at least that's something I'm trying.
Yeah. I love the fact that you're talking about it open and getting them exposed, because I think that's the right, I agree with that. I'm not no expert, but I think when people are taboo about money, taboo about things, don't say, don't talk, don't do, it makes it even worse, because it's sort of cloak and shadow. There's something about learning, which is financial mistakes. That's how you really learn. What was your most irrational financial mistake, and what did it teach you?
Well, business-wise, I didn't make financial mistakes in business. I always put the money back in the business. That was the best thing. And I bet on the business while business was growing.
How did you do that?
So I started with a couple $100, my first company. So I didn't really have money. So it was whatever I had was open a server and a couple little things. And then I learned SEO. So SEO, you start getting traffic for free, and then you flip merchandise. There is no overheads. I was working from home, flipping goods, telling people. Eventually, you get a warehouse, storage at first, then a warehouse space, like little by little, and so on. And I kind of learned how to bootstrap because I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't even think about raising money. So I was always operating under profit. Same with BoxyCharm, where I had already warehouse space, I had employees, I had office space, so I had infrastructure to start a new business. And I think that collectively, without counting rent price, it was about $500,000 that I put in, and then a year later I took that money out back because it was profitable. So that was my thing in terms of business. So I cannot give you kind of like an expert advice on that because I never operated under. I've made other mistakes investing-wise, and I knew going into it that I will make mistakes because I'm green, I'm inexperienced, and I figure, okay, this is how much I'm willing to lose, right? So I put a number behind this, and I made some poor investments, just investing in private companies and certain people or so on, and you lose some money until you said, okay, look, I'm not mad at myself. I knew that I needed to see it. If you invest in people that just take the money and run, or not exactly, but pretty much like that, and you have thieves in the world, and they can come in the form of lawyers, doctors, PhD scientists, and you can get all those people. But overall, you need to see a snake, what a snake look like. And it eventually would cost you, but I'm putting a bet that I'm allowing myself to lose. But ultimately, I kind of learned that when you do start in anything investing, try to invest alongside an experienced person. Your chance of success is much higher. And that was what worked for me. So that was, so in terms of financial mistakes, I made some. I don't want to give you a number because you can say, oh my God, it's a lot, but it was all calculated for me. I lost some cash, but nothing drastic, nothing dramatic.
I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who have exits. And I find that because they have exits, because they have liquidity, they are successful. They are you said 1 in 35,000 scaled to 100 million. I don't know how many entrepreneurs sell a business for hundreds of millions. So that number is very small. So did you feel I know best, let me do it, and then you quickly
It
realize
depends with who you talk, right? Who's talking to me? Look, I need someone that has experience, that have seen things I haven't seen, or have seen what I have seen as well, right, at the bare minimum. Because, look, if you're talking right now and you run $100 million business, and you're sitting with a peer of a few people, and you said, well, I have this situation, and I'm trying to understand why it's not working, and so on, and it's very technical, and someone else that does completely different business than you, that grosses $1 million, gives you all the advices. I don't know how much seriously you can take him, because he's not speaking out of experience. He hasn't been there, right? You climbed a mountain and he barely climbed a small hill. His view from the top of that hill is nothing to be, he cannot comprehend what you've seen yet. So it's okay to not listen to everybody. That's my point. Now, have I done this across the board with everybody? No, because when you climb up, your network is different. You have people who do like you or better, and you listen to them. The ego, I guess the biggest thing about ego is not being, I heard that line, and it was ego is coming negative when it stops you from learning something you think you already know. So if you're right now doing something on TikTok, yeah, you don't make money, it's okay, but you have $1 million a month, but you found a marketing trick on TikTok because you're every day on it and you're 18 years old. I'll listen to you. I'm not on TikTok every day like you, right? I understand that. All right, so you have to have some common sense, and I don't know if you can teach that. It's just either you have it or you don't, but it doesn't mean you need to listen to everybody. Eventually, you gotta have some filter. Otherwise, everyone's gonna come to you with advices, and you're not the one that actually make a decision. You're just taking advisors that will tell you what to do. You have to eventually put the foot on it and say, and that has to be before you make those big sales and exits. And you need to know who to listen to and why.
Great advice. And I think that's how you save yourself from a lot of pain. And if you have pain, learn from it quickly and move on. Last question about money. What's a money rule you live by now that you used to violate before?
Look, the way I am is, you're not gonna see any fancy stuff on me necessarily, like watches or nothing against it, right? I would say that before I had a business, before I had anything, before I had a concept of a business, and I had nothing, I was going to school, community college, lots of friends from my country, from Israel, and many of them would work and make money, and they would buy fancy stuff. And I remember that I noticed what you gain from having fancy stuff in Miami, nice watches and so on. You get more attractive for girls over here, at least. So I was, for a while, looking to buy a fake Rolex watch for $300, and I could never find something good. Then eventually came up the concept of the liquidation business. I got into it, grew the business, forgot about watches, eventually got married, business is growing, and one day I decided I'm gonna buy a gift for my wife. So I decided I'm gonna buy a Rolex. Shit, she's gonna be happy. Let me go and do it for her. So I don't know if I think it was Mother's Day. So I'm going to Aventura Mall, and at that time, you could walk in to Patek Philippe, to Rolex, you could buy the watch you want. There's no, it doesn't, get out of here, what are you doing? Go, we have a wait list, we don't want, it didn't exist, you can just buy whatever you want. And I was obsessed at the time with, not at that time, but prior to that, Rolex Daytona. And I remember I walked in and I'm like, shit, I forgot about it, it's been years. Maybe I should buy myself one, I can absolutely afford it now. Let's go and buy a real one, not a fake one, and I'm looking at them in real life this time, as opposed to just picture on the internet. I'm like, damn, they're actually much smaller. I didn't know that the size of the Daytona is small. I don't know. I didn't want to buy anything for me. And that was the thing that my mindset shifted from buy something to show off for to I don't need to show off anything. I really wanted this for a show off. And now when I had to drop the cash that I could for the real deal, and it would be, and I remember I calculated the percentage of what I have versus what it cost, and it was so small. I'm like, I can buy whatever I want, but I just don't want. And I bought one for my wife, but I didn't need anything for me. I was good. That was the different. So I would say the guilty pleasure, which I never actually afforded. Now, one thing I did decide was, I remember all those years when I couldn't afford the Rolex, I would always go in Publix, and I remember seeing blackberries and red berries. And it was beautiful, and it was $4, so I couldn't afford it. So for years, I was just looking at them in the supermarket. I didn't even know what they taste like. I was on a budget. And I said to myself, I'm never going to spare myself experiences. If I want the right food, I'll buy whatever I want. If I want flight, I'll enjoy the experience. Anyway, I don't care about brands, shoes, cars, watches. I don't care about it. So why not? And when it comes down to that, I'll buy whatever I want. And that was the shift for me. And I'm feeling every time I can afford, every time I buy blackberries or blueberries, I'm like, I'm grateful. Mm-hmm. That's all it takes to make me happy.
Beautiful, beautiful story. And also how some people might think now you have all the money in the world, you'll buy everything, but no, you'll still value what you valued when you didn't have. So it's like you didn't change. You just, now you appreciate it more.
And we're like that, right? If you look at most people going on a cruise, and now you have a fattening buffet over there, people go on a cruise coming back with extra pounds, versus the people that says, I don't care how much food they have, all I need is my 5 scrambled eggs with some berries, and I know there's all that food. I'm feeling waste if I am eating it versus not eating it. Just that's the shift you have to do in your mind.
For sure. And it's sort of like money reveals who you are. And like you said in the cruise, if you are someone that is kind of gluttonous, you will show it when it's for free. Let's go into something that I'm very curious, which is you are a force of nature as yourself. You can motivate yourself, you disciplined, you get that hammer, you hit it. How do you build a team that matches that energy, that gets you and wants to do the same level of work? How do you get there?
Wow, that's on point, and I feel like this is one thing I wish they taught in business class. In business school. So building a team is probably going to be the most challenging thing I had to go through when talking monsters. So the way you look at the companies, you start off very flat, and then if you do it right, you start flat, and then you start tiering the organization. And if you overhire, then you have too many processes, procedures, because more people means more meetings, and then it means more waste. But what happened in my case was I started a company, and I would hire kids from Hialeah. Very, very smart kids, but they're kids. So they haven't had the experience of having a tiered organization, and they can't manage like a professional manager because they don't have that. Sometimes it works, but a manager can manage 1 or 2 people at certain tasks that they know, but it comes out of proficiency as much. So it was hard for me because I had to be involved in every task, every activation. So when the company is small, it's easy, but when you get to about 30 million in sales, like a chicken with your head cut off, and you just lots of drama, and they're all women. And I mean, I can't tell you how I respect women a lot, but it's hard for one man to build because there's just so much drama that you don't even know, and they're talking to each other, and they're like passive aggressive, and you don't know it, and you think they're friends, but apparently there's missiles shooting at each other. And it was hard, and I needed someone more mature to handle this, to help me with that. And I remember that one thing I heard, which was putting it together very nice. It says the square root of your employees will do 50% of your work, which means 4 people, it means 50% is 2 people. You'll do 50%, right? That's your square root. But when you get to, say, 100 people, 10 people will do 50%. If you do 1,000, it's 33. And you scale to globally, you have 8 billion people on Earth, about 50,000 people will do half of the world's work. That's why some people are extremely productive. And how can you be the exception to the rule where your organization is much more productive than that, and everyone's going to be more productive? And we needed 2 things, and it took me a while to understand those 2 rules. One is You need to have a clear direction and vision for the business. When I say clear, don't think a Bible, think 10 commandments. Easy, billboard. Everyone that comes in understands. So if there is no one inside, they have to make a decision. They know where they're going and how to get there. So they would always make the right decisions. And we build a framework for that. And I will talk about this in a little bit after how it was coming together. And the second part is, I needed to hire someone from the top. So when we get to about 50 million in sales, that's when we were able to hire the right person to help us out. We were kind of like I said, chicken with our heads cut off. We were trying to hire some people. It didn't work with some of them. We had to let go some people. And good thing I fire fast, so you don't get stuck with the wrong people. And what happened was I needed to hire someone who have seen a business similar to mine that went from, say, $50 million to billions. And we did. We found one. Chewy, it's one of the few big corporations in Florida, and luckily they just sold. So we started hitting some VPs, and we got a great guy over there that came in as our new COO, and it was great because he knew what does it take to be from a small business to hundreds of millions or a couple billions in case of Chewy. And he did a fantastic job very quickly. We scaled, he learned, he basically put everything together. It was his first task to do it, but he has seen this in his organization. He has been through that journey. And that is everything. Experience build perspective. He had perspective that none of us had. So he was able to take my vision and build underneath that vision the organization. And that was so critical. And I would tell you that the process of doing that, you have to go through a process of elimination very, very fast within your organization or poor hires. So if you have people in your organization that know that particular task very well and you try to parachute a manager on top of them, and the manager doesn't know the job as well, but the manager is very competent, he would need a couple of weeks to figure it out, and eventually he would be able to build teams and do so. And it was hard because it was hard for them to accept someone managing them. You would say, well, you brought that lady, but she doesn't know the job. I know the job. Why is she the manager? Well, because she's a little bit more mature than you. And though she's yet still a generalist, she does not know the actual job. I'm not expecting her. I'm expecting you to know the job, but for her to manage. And it was just very hard. So I had to let go certain legacy people that were hard to adapt to a change where they cannot manage the fact that they're not going to be the bosses. So then I came up with a new rule and I said, look, right now your position is, let's just say, a VP or whatever, or a C-level. But we're doing about 30 million a year. And not you nor me, and I had to add me as well, have seen what a couple $100 million business look like, because $30 million business is not a $500 million business. And I was repeating someone else's line, that wasn't mine. What do you rather be? C-level in a $30 million business, or say a vice president, which is underneath, in a $500 million business, and say I've been throughout the journey. They're like, I much rather be. And that was a way to keep them, strip away the ego, and say, look, we're all going to get better from this. You're going to get better. You're going to see some transformation that very few people have seen, and it's going to change your life. And you have stock options. What do you care about? You stay in the same stock options. And that's when it really helped, because then I didn't have to let go good knowledge in a business and keep them around happy and engaged and run through, but still have a new boss that doesn't know the job yet, but knows how to put this together. And that really helped us.
I think it's so amazing to hear you say the journey, the path, the goal, the vision, because most people, I feel, hire for a task. They don't hire for the goal. They say, I need someone to do accounting, but they don't think, I need an accountant that can take my business from here to there. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that piece is what's critical and missing. You mentioned that, and I've seen some of your podcasts when you say, you know, you fired fast, or that was part of your culture. How do you do that? How did you have that intuition, or what type of metrics, or what was why was it fire fast?
Look, there are some positions I didn't really understand very well. And if every time I had the intuition around, so I'll give you an example with data scientists, okay? When I had to start building a data scientist team, and the company really grew from just selling boxes to have a technology team, have business intelligence team, having analysts for different positions. Then eventually we needed data scientists. You have to understand what the hell is the difference between BI, business intelligence, versus data science. And then you start learning a little, and you find out that with data scientists, you have no perspective of what good is. So you start hiring the first person, and you don't know why, you just know he's not the right guy. Right? And you find out you're right, but you didn't fire him fast enough because you didn't understand how catastrophic it is when someone that managed your data science doing a bad job. What happened? And so only when the catastrophe happens, you fire them. But in most cases, you understand the position. So then you are forced to understand data science so well that you're not going to make that decision. And I really hoped I don't have to learn another thing, but I had to. And then once you do, you said, okay, now I know. So then you're competent enough to know if the person is good based on a reasoning. And then you say, okay, if he's not good, I won't let him go, because you know what? It is what it is. A's higher A's, B's higher C's. And you've seen with your own eyes what happened when you hire a B in your organization. A B will hire lots of C's to do a job that one B can do, or that five Bs can do, or one A can do. And an A would not ever compromise on a B. He would only hire A's. The big difference between an A player versus a B player is so massive. It's kind of like, I'm stealing someone else's line that says like a great engineer will solve, an A-type engineer will solve a problem that 100 B-types can't comprehend. What a difference. And in my life, I can tell you this, look, our company was in Miami. We're not known for technology, so I hired a guy from Israel to be our data scientist eventually, and he was a personality. He wasn't easy as a personality, but he was a fucking rock star. And I can tell you that when I sold the company in San Francisco that acquired us, they had about 7 or 8 people in our data scientist team for about 10 years. I had this guy for a year. The system that he built for us for a year versus their system, the AI system that they had, was fundamentally so different that later on, I had a sit down with them, and they said, look, we need to just abolish what we built and just use that system. And after I sold the company, he stayed around and he told me, look, man, I don't want to stay here because you left. But is that okay if I'm going to leave? I said, look, you can do whatever you want. But they needed him longer, so they kept him, and they gave him some extra contracts or so on to keep him until he just said, I'm going to go. But it's just to show you the difference. What happened when you get one rock star? Always look for those rock stars, because rock stars will change your business. Your business is only as good as your employees. And a big piece of what you do as an entrepreneur is looking for those people. Looking for them, it's so instrumental. So if you want to do marketing and you say, well, look, let's just assume that Mr. Beast is going to promote your business. Whatever you sell, if you sell jewelry, you're going to sell out. All the kids are going to buy your product, right? What makes you think it's any different with engineering or with anything else? It's going to be the same. Get that Mr. Beast, that Michael Jordan. I mean, the analogy would always be Michael Jordan. For me, get the Michael Jordan, get the hydrogen bomb. It's different. Just trust me, everything will change underneath that person.
Love it. Love it. You were early in the community building influencer space with BoxyCharm. What do you think is different today, and how are you applying it to your new ventures?
Well, okay. So when I opened BoxyCharm, the companies that the beauty space was the number one trending category on social media, and dudes like us that were with beards would open Instagram and we would see girls doing transformation, makeup transformation, completely ridiculous. There was zero personalization that was good. There was no reason. So I rode that wave. And the category was booming. On top of that, the color cosmetic was different than what it is today. Today, they're going to use no makeup. So in my time, it was all the crazy colors you can imagine. So I technically was selling eyeshadow palettes in a box with 4 more items. And it's a great deal. So people would stick around because those ladies wanted a different eyeshadow palette with, I need that green and not the other green. Today, it doesn't happen anymore. They need nudes, which is, you don't need more than 2 palettes in your life. And that was a ride, and I understood why I was there. During that time, Facebook was still a thing in the United States where The women with all the stay-home mom with all the disposable income were using Facebook. And in that platform, you have a feature called forums, or at first it was forums, then groups. I think later on it was changed to groups. And that was a very critical component of the way we build our community. Very, very critical. Today you can still do it. It's just different. But to build a community, you have to understand what is a community, which is a group of people with the same interest in the same space activating together. So the space was the Facebook forum. For me, it was so easy. And the activation is I would give them kind of like a scavenger hunt 3 times a month. I said next month, tomorrow, somewhere I'm gonna post a sneak peek, and I would let them all search the internet, and I would go back to Google Trend, and I would look at the time when I told them it says tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I would go back, look at Google Trend, and you would see a spike. You would get more mentions than any other. I mean, type in Nike, Fashion Nova, whatever, we would get more mentions for that hour. Because the idea is that you want everyone to search about you at the same time, not sporadically. So you gather the troops, you gather all the communities, you get hundreds of thousands of people, and you can go viral on the forums so easy compared to not being on a forum, on a Facebook forum. So that was it. Today, you might want to go and create a reasoning for people, not you, but other people. Give them a reason to create Discord accounts, Telegram accounts about your product with reasons. Just let them do it. Create ideas that get people to engage by creating pages about you. And I feel like Andrew Tate did a good job with that on TikTok and Instagram. So it's the same concept. Let other people create pages about you. What is the reason for that? You figure it out. Now you're, well, I'm just selling life insurance. I don't know, man. Then I'm just figure it out. But that's what you got to do. Don't tell me I can't do it. Just tell me I didn't find it yet, and then go from that direction until you figure it out.
Did you ever feel lost post-exit?
No, post-exit, I never got lost. I mean, I feel maybe because of my age, I'm almost 50 now. I'm 47, turning 48 this year. So when I sold it a couple of years ago, I was in my 40s. You know, it wasn't my first exit. I had a few exits before. I have children. I get divorced, but I see my children half of the time. So I was never lost. I got bored a little bit after, because at first you're like, I enjoyed doing nothing for a little bit, but then you get bored very quickly. So that was that. But I never got lost. The only time I got lost was when you start a business and you're hitting a wall and you're hitting a wall again and you're hitting a wall again, and you feel lost because you don't have the answer of the why and how to get around that. And then when you do get around that the first time and the second time, eventually that's it. You never get lost again. You just know that eventually you're going to crack that wall.
Very wise. If someone is listening to this and they feel they're quietly failing, or they feel they're not getting any success, what would you say to them?
I mean, for me, I don't know their situation, right? Everyone has a different situation. But when I went through that, and it was, you get stagnant for a while. And when I say a while, it can be easily over a year, because I never actually chronologically went back and checked it. But it happened to me. One big thing was changing what I do throughout the day for the business, right? Many people are doing a lot of things they don't need to do more than 1 or 2% of the time. And for example, listening to podcasts like this, some people would listen to business podcasts all day long, going to masterminds, reading books and all. Yeah, but you're putting all that time, then this is entertainment for you. It's a hobby. It's not a real business, right? So everyone has a different reason. In my case, I found my mistake of what I was wasting my time on. And every so often when comes a crisis, when you have to reinvent yourself, you said, okay, no more doing this. I don't have time for this right now. And you said, oh, fuck. Let me understand what's urgent and important every day. And let me tackle this. I need to understand the urgency for the day, get rid of that out of the way, and then move back into the very important. And everything else is a distraction. There is also things I did naturally, right? I only did 1 or 2 things. I never really did too many things. Otherwise, you never perfect the 1 or 2 things you do. You just got to make sure that those 1 things you do or 2, those are highly important. If you're in a battle and you fight, what's more important, to take the mountain or to take 5 different hills? I would say climb the mountain. You have a view, you can take from there any hill. After that, you own the hills, right? So most of the entrepreneurs doing mistakes by going after hills because a mountain is too important. It's too hard.
Yeah.
And, you just identify that. And if you put that time into the very important things, then you'll see the magic happens eventually. If you do all the little things that are semi-important, but not too much, you'll never do the big important things. And overall, it's coming down to the day-to-day of what you do every day will dictate where you're going to be in a year.
I will write down in my journal, what is the mountain, and answer it every day.
Yeah.
Yosef,
I'm coming up with this as I'm talking, so it wasn't forming but that's exactly what it would be a good thing to write.
I love it. Yosef, it's been an absolute honor to learn from you. I am humbled by all the experience you shared and so sincere, so candid. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you for having me, my brother. Appreciate that.
Let's do it again in a few years because I'll keep learning from you. Thank you.
Same here.
Thank you.